The events begin on a clear day at the train station of the city, which is crowded with people in the pre-holiday time. Some seemingly harmless mosquito lands on the neck of an unsuspecting man passing by. This mosquito is happy to start his meal and digs his trunk into the skin of a man. Along with the mosquito's saliva, a special virus enters the man's body, the carrier of which was a mosquito. From a mosquito bite, a trace forms on the man's neck and his skin is covered with green spots. The unsuspecting man goes on among the crowd of people, as he needs to get on the train. They begin to introduce us to the characters of the story, and we see Grandfather Hinlao together with his grandchildren. At this time, the bitten man goes on and his wound begins to itch and irritate him. Apparently the bite will have some consequences. And here is the mother of the main character, who looks tired, because she cares about the whole family and does not want to miss the train. This is her youngest daughter, Sarah. She dropped out of university, listens to rock music, and has an unstable character. This is the father of the main character, Steve, who always carries his unnecessary junk with him, and in life he has achieved almost nothing, remaining a loser. Now we see the older sister of the main character, whose name is Nika, and she is studying at the third year of medical university. But she got pregnant. And here is the main character of our events, whose name is Manhwa, and he has been suffering from various diseases since childhood, has a weak body, and has always been the object of ridicule and humiliation. He looks at his family and thinks that his family is just losers like himself, and that this is their fate. Manhwa believes that nothing else will work out for him in life, because of his illnesses, he skips school and cannot study properly at the university. We see that in front of the main character there is some very beautiful and stylishly dressed girl, whom Manhwa pays attention to. Suddenly he sees some kind of hand that is pointed at the skirt of this cute young girl. We understand that this is the same man who was bitten by a mosquito, and apparently he wants to touch this young girl for that place. Indeed, this man touches this girl by the skirt and what is under it, on the basis of which he most likely became some kind of pervert or maniac. However, this man quickly runs away, and the girl turns around and sees our main character first. Deciding that it was he who touched her skirt, she punches him in the face with her fist, saying that he is a pervert. After that, she apologizes for her blow, and that she did not restrain her emotions, but still does not understand why Manhwa got to her. Our main character begins to explain that it wasn't him, but the girl cries and runs away because she is very vulnerable. Manhwa is surprised that firstly, he was mistaken for a pervert, and secondly, he was not even given the opportunity to say so. Then we see that the man attacks the girl again, but this time he manages to bite her neck, because the girl is weak and does not have time to avoid it. The police immediately react to this and grab this man to take him to the police station for the proceedings. After that, the officers interrogate the girl about what just happened. The girl says that this guy slightly bit her neck, but she is not sick and she does not need hospitalization. All this time, Manhwa was filming these events on his phone, and at some point something seemed to him. Namely, he saw something impossible on the recording when the police took the arrested man to the police station. That's what he saw. That man turned his head back like he was some kind of monster. Manhwa decides that it seemed to him because he has a headache and is tired and will not pay much attention to this. Next, we see that our characters have already boarded train number 47 and are laying out their things. However, Grandfather Hinlao froze in a daze, although he is blind, but sometimes he sees special visions. This time he saw that all the passengers of this train would die in terrible agony, and that no one could prevent it. All the people take their seats, including Grandpa and his grandchildren and Sister Manhwa. The girl who was bitten on the neck by that strange man also took her place in this car. She has a bandage on her neck from which blood oozes from the wound and green spots are already visible that are spreading over the girl's body. Manhwa sees this and has a bad feeling. Then the events are transferred to the police station where the bitten man was taken, and we see the corpse of a policeman on the floor. A man bitten by a mosquito has acquired a strange appearance and a characteristic greenish tinge of eyes, and apparently he's going to kill the second policeman. Meanwhile, at the train station from which our heroes have just left by train, some kind of chaos and an invasion of mosquitoes begins to happen. We see that there are more and more of these mosquitoes and something is definitely wrong here. Manhwa is sitting next to that bitten girl, joyful because he practically does not communicate with other girls, and he is pleased to be in her company. Manhwa thinks she smells delicious, and her hair and eye color makes him think about shameful things. Next, Manhwa's attention is transferred to the conversation that takes place near him. Namely, we see a dialogue between a director and an actor who asks to pay him a fee, since he has a sick mother and she needs treatment. However, the director refuses him, citing the fact that he knows a more useful use of the money earned. Namely, he puts a wad of money in the bra of a young companion who follows him everywhere. The actor curses the director for this, and shouts for him to get sick as well as his mother. And this is heard by a guy with black hair and a pen in his hands passing nearby. The guy puts his hand on the actor's shoulder and says that he can kill this person for him, but the actor runs away. Then Manhwa looks to the other side of the car and is very surprised, because he did not expect to see this person in his own car. That charming young and sweet girl was sitting at the table, who thought that our hero was a pervert and hit him. She listened to music with headphones, was dressed in a skirt, cute stockings and a blouse, and Manri really liked it. The main character goes to the toilet so that that young girl does not see him and does not raise a scream. Suddenly he hears his mother talking to some man who are talking very quietly. Namely, his mother tells that man to wait because she's going to divorce Manri's father. Our main character does not understand how his own mother can give his father, and realizes that all this time his mother has been cheating on him with another man. He remembers seeing this stranger earlier near their house. Meanwhile, the train arrives at the first station and after waiting a few minutes leaves further. The train conductor closes all the doors and goes on about his business. However, we are shown a young girl running after the departing train and shouting for it to stop. However, dozens of rotten and bloody hands are reaching out of the darkness for the girl. These hands are taking this young girl into the darkness without giving her the opportunity to escape. By the expression on the girl's face, we understand that she is in wild terror, but she has already come to terms with her fate, and with the fact that in a few seconds, she will die. The station's lantern shines on the asphalt and we notice only the bloody hand of an unknown girl, who is dragged into darkness and emptiness. Meanwhile, on the train, someone starts to shoot a video clip on the camera and broadcast live on the internet. This is a young girl who is a popular blogger and she welcomes her subscribers. She's going to interview the first person who gets in her way. Suddenly, we see the events that are happening behind this girl, namely some silhouette of a guy going to meet her. This silhouette turns out to be a monster jumping on a girl, causing the camera to fall to the floor along with the girl and the monster. Infected Guy C picks up a camera and looks into it, and we see terrible eyes filled with a thirst to kill. At this time, Menri's father is smoking on the train with some man and talking about his unsuccessful life. At this moment, his daughter comes into the smoking room and asks for a lighter to light up, and the father shouts at her because he did not know before that his younger daughter had already started smoking. All this is heard by Nick's eldest pregnant daughter, who also joins her father to scold Sarah. The girls quarrel and go to different cars so as not to see each other, and the father can't do anything in this situation. Next we see the main character who walks along the car to get to his seat. He notices a woman's skirt in the aisle and it attracts his attention, so he wants to come closer to look. Suddenly he sees a terrifying situation where a girl devours some poor man. The man's face resembles an insensitive doll and we understand that he has already died. The girl notices Menri and looks straight at him. The main character sees that a mobile phone is sticking out in the skull of this girl, but she still continues to talk and says that she is going to devour Menri. At this second, she rushes at the main character and knocks him to the floor. She bites the hand and bites off a small piece of the hand with great pleasure. The infected girl says that she has never tasted anything tastier in her life, since the taste of Menri's body reminds her of a sweet melon, and she wants to try another piece. At this moment, two train conductors appear behind the girl and distract her from the meal. In a rage, the girl jumps up and is going to attack the guides because they prevented her from having dinner. The man whom the infected girl ate before begins to rise and mutate with apparently from the bite, all people turn into monsters or peculiar zombies. This man got fat right in front of my eyes and says that he is very hungry and wants to bite someone. Next, we are shown what is happening behind the train, namely a crowd of monsters chasing this train. We see that they are attracted by the sound of the train, and there are several hundred of them, and they are all angry and insanely hungry. A girl with a mobile phone in her skull continues to walk along the train and finds a car with people. She says that she really likes the smell of people, which warms up her appetite. She rushes at the first man she sees and knocks him down. With pleasure, she tears off a piece of this young guy's neck and eats it. Literally in a moment, this guy turns into the same monster, and we realize that this virus is transmitted through bite and saliva. The infected girl begins to bite everyone and taste a little of everyone. Bitten people become infected with monsters in almost a few seconds and start doing the same thing as her. Complete chaos and panic begins in the car. People start screaming and running away in different directions. Behind the panicking people, that black-haired guy with a pen appears and says that it's not worth panicking because he knows what needs to be done. From the handle that was in his hands, he extracts a small knife and prepares to use it. All these events are seen by a girl police officer who, together with the police boss, was going on a special mission. She immediately informs her boss, who was in the smoking room, that something strange is happening in the car, and that all people have fallen ill with rabies and gone crazy. At this time, we are shown an exhausted Menri who lies exactly where he was bitten. The virus enters his bloodstream and enters his body. Manri himself experiences hallucinations and remembers what happened to him as a child. Namely, that no one was friends with him, and at school all the boys humiliated him because of weakness. Manri, realizing that he would mutate because of the bite and become a monster, resigned himself to the fact that now he would die without doing anything useful for his miserable life. They show us Sister Menri, and she comes out of the toilet to sit down, not even suspecting what is happening in the car now. She sees Manri lying unconscious on the floor and thinks that he fainted as usual. Nika runs past the crowd without noticing what is happening because she only thinks about helping her younger brother. She begins to massage Menri's heart so that he starts breathing and regains consciousness. We see that by this time, a whole crowd of monsters has already formed behind Nikki, who will rush at them in the next few seconds to eat them. Meanwhile, the police chief starts shooting monsters in the hope of saving the remaining people in his car. However, we see that monsters do not die even from a shot in the neck, from which we conclude that everyone is in very great danger until they understand how to kill them. Manri regains consciousness and opens his eyes, as his sister has brought him to consciousness. The wound on Manri's arm hurts a lot and he remembers it. He imagines that now he will become a monster or a zombie and will do terrible things and rush at people. At this second, he sees that dozens of creatures are coming to them from behind his sister, ready to tear her into small pieces. Manri gets up and says that if he dies today, at least he will do something useful for his life, especially since he has nothing more to lose. Suddenly he feels a strange energy penetrating deeper and deeper into his body from his wound. He feels an unprecedented surge of strength, clarity of mind, and incredible anger at these creatures who are going to kill him. Manri thinks that everything happening around him seems to be slowed down for him, from which he understands that his reaction is now on the border of the impossible. He is going to destroy all these creatures even at the cost of his life. He punches all the monsters in the face with great force and speed. Next, Manri begins to beat everyone with his feet using various techniques that he did not know before. His sister is in complete shock and does not understand why Manri has such skills, such strength and speed. We see that the main character took the stance of a professional martial arts fighter. We are shown how Manri, as a child, liked to watch TV shows about martial arts on TV and memorize techniques with pleasure. But then he couldn't repeat them because he was too weak and everyone told him that he was just wasting his time. Apparently, because of the virus in his body and mutation, he was able to repeat the techniques he saw in childhood. He continues to repel the attacks of infected creatures and protect his sister from them. It should be noted that Manri does this with special fury because the virus gives him aggression. Realizing that there is no end to monsters, he takes his sister in his arms and is going to break through the crowd of monsters with her. He tells her to trust him as he has never felt so much strength and confidence in himself before. The main character jumps through a crowd of monsters with great agility, while carrying his pregnant sister in his arms. We see that Manri is not afraid of these creatures because he feels like one of them and jumps over their heads. The main character puts his sister and says that he needs to find his parents and sisters and save them too. Manri cries and says goodbye to Nika because he believes that they will not see each other again because he will soon turn into a real monster, or they will kill him before that. He turns around and runs into the crowd of enemies, realizing that the best thing he can do is die with meaning and do something useful for his family. Manri jumps towards unknown danger and hungry creatures, hoping that the rest of his family members are still alive. They show us that there are riots in the world at this time and the epidemic is growing more and more. People on the streets of the city in a panic do not understand what to do because it was impossible to prepare for this. The police and the army are trying to contain the onslaught of these monsters and creatures. All this is seen by a train passenger through mobile phones and understands that a mess is going on all over the world, and not just on their train. Manri's father calms his mother and says that everything will be fine. At this time, their eldest daughter appears behind them, who has just been saved by Manri, and she goes to them. She says that something strange happened to Manri, and he went in a completely different direction to find them. Manri's mother says she will go to look for Manri and goes to dismantle the barricades that people have built to keep monsters out of the car. However, when she opens the door, she sees the terrible face of a hungry infected person who asks her to open the door completely. People quickly close this door and everyone understands that there is a huge crowd of creatures behind it that will tear them apart at the first opportunity. The mother realizes with horror that most likely her weak son is already dead because he will not be able to take care of himself. At this time, Manri's father is sitting next to his bag of junk and wants to keep his things safe. From his facial expression, we understand that maybe there is something really useful in this bag. Further events are transferred to Manri's younger sister, who is attacked by an infected man. A bullet fired from a police pistol flies into the monster's head. The girl is rescued by a police officer and says that now they will defend themselves from monsters together. We see that in front of them there is a huge crowd of people who are trying to get out of the car in a panic. But because of their stupidity and greed, they cannot give in to each other, and a whole crush of people has formed. Sister Manri understands that they are trapped, where on the one hand the exit is blocked by monsters, and on the other by stupid people who crush each other and do not let them pass. Suddenly she sees an exit to the kitchen of the restaurant, and maybe this door will be the salvation for them. Events are transferred to the father of some girl, who, as we see, has already been bitten by monsters, but he continues to protect his daughter at the cost of his life. Our main character sees this and he decides to make a cruel choice in favor of a little girl. He snatches her out of her father's arms, realizing that he will turn into a monster in the next second. And so it happens, and in a moment the little girl's father turns into a monster eager to devour them both. Manri sees this with horror and understands the tragedy of the situation. He decides to save the little girl at all costs and protect her from all this horror happening on the train. Next, we see that beautiful stranger girl who was touched by a man at the station. She was trapped by monsters. She thinks that she can no longer escape from these creatures because she is weak and can neither fight nor run. Terrible and terrible creatures surrounded her and say that now they will taste her skin and panties. The girl was prepared for the fact that now she is going to die and nothing can change it. Suddenly she feels her feet lift off the ground, and a moment later she realizes that someone has picked her up. Our main character, with a little girl on his shoulders, saved a beautiful stranger straight from the hands of terrible creatures. He says he can get her out of this chaos if she trusts him because she won't survive alone. We see a mother and her cowardly son standing in the corner of this car, whom she protects with a floor mop. Manhwa takes out the monsters' heads with a kick and protects these two helpless ones. The girl looks with trepidation at the main character and understands how brave he is and is ready to protect people at the cost of his life. Manhwa grabs all the people and takes them further ahead of the car. At this time, the police chief shoots at the ceiling of the car to attract the attention of the creatures. And it really works, because the whole crowd of monsters went straight to the chief of police. This maneuver made it possible for our heroes to escape to a safe place. Suddenly, Manhwa stops and is horrified by the picture he saw, namely the parts of the monster's body that were cut off. We see that all this was done by a guy with black hair who was just standing in the middle of the car. It seemed that even the monsters themselves were terrified of such rage, cruelty, and composure. The face of the guy with black hair was motionless and traces of mutation were visible on it, and we understand that he will soon be reborn into a monster. In the corner of the car sits an actor whom we have previously seen, and he says something in a whisper. He vomited from the picture he saw and said that the guy with black hair is a real devil in the flesh. Everyone is surprised by such words of the actor, but they decide to help him because he is not bitten. The guy is lifted to his feet, and the increased company of young people leave this car further in the hope of finding a safer place. The guy with the black hair just stayed standing in the middle of the car and didn't make a single move. Manhwa's company came close to the door to the next car and saw through the glass that it was filled with monsters. By this time, they were already eating the bones of the dead people and taking them away from each other. Suddenly, the girl tells Manhwa that she has an idea how they can get through all these monsters and survive at the same time. She says that monsters react to sound, and therefore if they crawl around them very quietly, they will remain unnoticed. Events take us to the kitchen of the restaurant, and we understand that Sarah's company managed to get into this car and close the doors. The people present pay attention to Sarah's young and slender body, as well as to the fact that she is not worried and just dances to the music from her headphones, because so far they are safe. We return to the Manhwa company again and see that they have crawled past the monsters. The main character and everyone around are trying not to breathe and behave as quietly as possible. Manhwa crawls after this girl in a skirt. Suddenly, accidentally, he bumps his face into the skirt of this girl and feels how beautifully she smells of vanilla and peaches. The girl is shy, but she can't say anything to Manhwa, because if she does, the monsters will hear them, and it will be very tragic. Therefore, the girl and Manhwa continue to crawl forward together. We see that the mother who protected her coward son with a mop carries him on her shoulders, and in front lies a can of carbonated drink. Her incompetent son steps on this jar and it will fasten, so all the monsters notice Manhwa's company. Our main character shouts at everyone to run, because if they don't hurry up, they will become dinner for these creatures. Manhwa says that he will delay the monsters to give the opportunity and time for others to escape. The girl is again surprised by the heroism of the main character, and takes the little girl to save her. Young people run away from this car and a little girl shouts in the direction of Manhwa, so that he does not die and catches up with them when he finishes with the monsters. The girl is crying because she thinks that she may not see our main character anymore. Manhwa picks up a mop and tells the monsters to attack him because he needs to get as much time as possible. Monsters attack him and easily knock his gun out of his hands and pin the hero to the wall. Literally in the next second, a monster that apparently was previously a guide will kill the final main character and eat him. The next moment, a thin knife blade comes out of the monster's mouth that almost touches Manhwa's eye. The rest of the monsters pounce on the one who has just pierced their kinsman and are going to kill him. The calm and cool-headed look of the guy assesses the whole situation and comes up with a plan. He grabs the tablecloth from the table and will apply it. Namely, he throws a tablecloth at a crowd of monsters and covers their heads. He deprived the monsters of their sight, and now it's easy to deal with them. And we understand that this is the same guy who dismembered the monsters in the car earlier. The black-haired man asks Manhwa to help him cope with the remnants of the infected creatures. Manhwa is shocked by what he saw and pulls out a knife that belongs to this guy. He returns the knife to the guy and realizes that most likely he was also bitten. But he turns in the same way as himself. That is, he managed to keep his mind. Manhwa asks what they will do together now. The guy answers him that now they will kill every monster that looks in their direction. In front of the two of them, another monsters appear who say that the price of a train ride is their kidneys and fingers. Manhwa is armed with a fire extinguisher and fights back against the monsters. He hits them with great speed and says that he would never use a fire extinguisher instead of a weapon, and that a knife is clearly better. The dark-haired guy says that he also likes a knife as a weapon most of all. The monsters are trying to take the fire extinguisher from Manhwa with the words that this fire extinguisher will be shoved into his ass. The guy understands that there are too many monsters and it's time to run away from here. Both guys run away as they realize that they have already won enough time for their friends. We are shown how a girl walks past an empty carriage and notices another survivor who is hiding in a corner. She looks at her closer and asks if she needs any help. At this second, the woman opens her face and we see that she does not have half of her skin and she is a monster. The girl is horrified by what she saw and falls into complete fear from this. The monster screams that he will now take half of the skin from the face of someone from living people. Also, more monsters are starting to come into the car. The coward's mother covers him with her body and prepares to defend him again at the cost of her life. The girl covers the child with her body and prepares to take the whole blow on herself. For the second time today, she is resigned to the fact that she is going to die, but she is glad that she will save the child. Suddenly, a plate flies into the monster's head and it falls to the ground. Manri jokes that he would never have thought before what the cutlery from the restaurant might be needed for. The company sees that Manri is back and they are very happy about it. However, the monsters are still coming and the danger has not passed yet. The black-haired guy rushes forward past our heroes. In a matter of seconds, he deals with the creatures. However, he does it with extreme cruelty, and it seems to others that there is something wrong with him. Manri calls everyone to follow him, and the company runs on to the next car in which it will be safe. We see that in reality there are people in the next car who let our company of people inside. A black-haired maniac also comes in with them. A girl with a phone camera falls in love with a black-haired handsome man. Suddenly, Manri falls on the girl as he has run out of strength to stand on his feet. He feels her beautiful scent, feels her soft, silky skin. His hand reaches for the skirt of a young girl and we don't know what he's going to do with it. People around begin to notice Manri's strange behavior and express their concern. Manri says in the girl's ear that he needs to leave here because it's hard for him to control himself, because there is also a virus in his body that affects him. All the people heard this and start kicking them both out of the safe carriage. Manri says that if the girl does not leave him, then two will be kicked out. He says she needs to stay safe with the rescued child. Manri begins to pretend that he is mutating so that he is kicked out and the girl is left inside the car. However, the girl takes his hand and says that she does not believe him, because he saved her life twice, and now she is attached to him. The main character feels the warmth from the girl's hand and her delicate skin, which makes him feel a little calmer. However, our hero still decides not to put her in danger, and shouts to the whole car that if this girl is not removed from him now, he will devour everyone. The surrounding people take the young girl away, giving Manri the opportunity to leave. The girl screams and cries and wants to go with him. However, he realizes that he will put her in danger and leaves. Opening the doors, Manri saw the picture that he expected. Monsters are crowding into the aisle of the car, eating other people. They see Manri and tell him that they will play with him now and then kill him. Manri coughs on his hand and sees that his time has already come since his body is no longer able to fight the virus. Our main character understands that this time he will definitely not survive, and it's time to die. He knows that before he died, he saved several people and met the most beautiful girl in the world, so he can safely disappear. We are shown that at this time my mother and older sister Manri are talking to each other, and the mother asks Nick to have an abortion. She says that the child will be a burden to her, and because of him, Nika will not be able to become a successful person. Nika is shocked by what she has heard and understands that her mother is a very cruel person. Suddenly, Manri's father shouts that the connection in the mobile phone began to catch well and he was able to reach Sarah. The youngest daughter, Sarah, said that she was in the kitchen of the restaurant and was safe for the time being. Sarah's mother says that she and her father will come up with something to save her. Meanwhile, the monster approaches the door of the restaurant's kitchen. We see that he has a key to the door in his hands. The clever creature inserts the key into the door with an awkward movement and tries to open the lock. The door behind Sarah began to open slowly. Suddenly, the mobile phone connection is cut off and the conversation ends. Sarah's mother notices some kind of glow near her and turns around to look. In front of her stood her husband in various armor and protection and helmet. All the people around are interested in such equipment as it increases the chances of survival. All the people started to dismantle my father's equipment and offer huge money for it. People understood that it was better to pay all the money they had with them and survive than to die. Manri's father has now received as much money as he has not earned in his entire life, and today is his glory day. Meanwhile, we see that Manri is lying surrounded by monsters, and has already come to terms with the fact that now he will inevitably die. Blood has filled his face and eyes. His body does not obey, but he notices something ahead of him. There, far away from the darkness, a monster with green eyes was looking at him. It started talking and said that Mommy was already there. Manri begins to cry from pain and fear. The monster grabs Manri with its long arm and lifts him into the air. She wants to know what it will taste like, because he has already been bitten before. The creature sniffs Manri and says that after being bitten by a monster like her, he smells like cow dung. She throws Manri on the floor with hatred because she thought she could eat delicious. At first, our hero thought that he would be allowed to die peacefully and now he can relax, but he felt like 1 ton of weight fell on his body. We see that this creature begins to devour Manri and devour his whole body. We see the bloodied eye of the protagonist and realize that this is the last thing he sees in his life. The door handle of the door to the restaurant kitchen slowly starts down without making a single sound. A thin, rotten brush of green color opened the door itself. Dozens of pairs of hands began to break into the restaurant kitchen at the same time to grab at least a piece of human flesh. People started screaming in horror, realizing that they were cornered and nothing would help them anymore. A large shadow hung over our characters, letting us know how huge and terrifying the problem they face ahead. Menri's father, who has been a loser all his life, takes the initiative for the first time. He gives a bracelet made with his own hands to his wife, who, as you and I know, is cheating on him and wants to divorce him. He cries and leaves in the hope that he will save his daughter and son and do something useful for the first time in his life. We see that along with him there are also two young guys who bought armor from him, and they also want to find their loved ones and help each other survive in this chaos. Next, we are shown the events that take place in the second safe car where there is a beautiful stranger Menri and a small child. We are shown the face of a man who is in this car, and apparently he is chewing something in his mouth. He spits out a human finger, which he probably didn't like to taste. A man with a bloody hand is sitting on the floor on his knees, and we understand that the finger was bitten off from his hand. People turned against the man who bit off his finger because they concluded that he was infected. We see that it was the cowardly son who became infected, who was hiding behind his mother all the time, and she continues to protect him, only this time from ordinary people, not monsters. The son begins to mutate a monster, and apparently against this background, the mother is going crazy and is not going to interfere with it somehow. She cries either out of madness, or out of joy or disappointment, or because of some pride for her son, because at last he will do something, even if something terrible. We see how the son bites his mother's neck and begins to eat her. People immediately pounce on him and eliminate him. However, by this time, a real chaos had already reigned in the car that was safe just a couple of minutes ago. At the same time, someone's feet do not run away from this chaos, but on the contrary, go towards it. The same leg stops the monster in one motion and tramples it into the floor. We see that this is the leg of our black-haired friend, whose mind was most likely disturbed long before these events. All this is filmed on camera and broadcast live by some girl. Apparently, she is very happy with the footage she has obtained, as she thinks it will make her popular on the internet. And now we see the events taking place with Menri's father, who, along with two guys, volunteered to help the survivors in the car and find their relatives. They were surrounded by a crowd of viral creatures who are eager to prey on their insides. As we can see, the armor made by Menri's father works very well, and they do not allow monsters to bite his hands. Suddenly, we see a sword rising up like a knight's and ready to strike down his enemies with the most accurate blows. Now we see that it belongs to one of the volunteers who followed the father of the main character. Spinning as if in a real dance, this character hits one enemy after another from a long distance. When he finished, there was not a single living monster nearby, because his sword found everyone to the last one who wanted to profit from human meat. We return to the carriage again, in which a black-haired maniac is not afraid of either people or the risen dead. His unbreakable and indifferent gaze only tells his mind when and where to strike the next blow. Monsters do not even have time to get close to him as they immediately go to hell. The girl who was protected by the black-haired guy is standing behind him and feels that she is finally safe. She tells him words of gratitude and recognition of his strength and determination. At this moment, she feels the strongest pain on her face, and from the surprise of this pain, she feels even stronger. The girl touches her face in horror and realizes that it is all cut and bleeding very much. The black-haired guy gestures for her to shut up, and we understand that he hurt the girl's face. With a movement of his hand, he finishes what he started doing with this girl, and after that she obviously won't get up. A beautiful stranger who promised Menri to protect the child is trying to close her eyes so that the baby does not see all this horror, which this time is not made by monsters, but just by a person. At this second, the maniac finds the two of them hiding under the table, and by his expression we understand that she will be the next one he will kill. A maniac drags our beautiful friend by the hair, and we see how defenseless and fragile she is for such a thing. He picks her up by the hair and asks what her last words will be before she dies, because in a moment, he is going to send her to the next world with a blow of the blade. However, the little girl pulls her defender back and asks the maniac not to kill her and spare their lives. The black-haired maniac says that it is even more interesting for him, and he is ready to play with everyone who is still alive in this car. The maniac comes up with a game in which he will put everyone in a circle opposite each other, and twist his knife until he stops and indicates who he will kill next. And so it happens. The black-haired man launches his knife, spins on the floor, and watches with great intrigue who fate will order to take his life. The blade of the knife stops at another girl, who understands what is about to happen and starts screaming in horror. She wants to escape from a maniac because she believes that hungry monsters would rather kill her than a person suffering from a mental disorder. However, we see that the girl does not manage to escape, and the black-haired man does what he promised before the start of the game. He combs his hair near the mirror and is happy about how much fun he has because of this game and the fact that with each round there will be fewer people. He launches the deadly blade again, spins on the spot and suggests whom he should destroy next. The blade stops at the little girl who was saved by Manri at the beginning of our story. Is her life going to end before it really starts? Manri's girlfriend starts begging the maniac not to touch the little girl, and says that the maniac can do whatever he wanted with her to spare the child. The maniac accepts her offer and warns that it will be very painful, and that she will beg for mercy until he finishes her off. A black-haired guy cuts a girl's jacket with his deadly blade. The girl thinks in her head that she will not scream for anything, because she understands that the more she screams, the more the maniac will like it. Now we are shown events outside the train, and we see that infected creatures are chasing the train in a crowd of thousands. They are like ants climbing on the supports of the bridge, the roads, and the train itself, in the hope of trying at least a small piece of man. We see our beloved girl again. But a couple of minutes later, she is already all exhausted and cut. Her skirt and skin are also cut. The child is crying and does not want her friend to die and protect her at the cost of her life. However, the girl calms her down and says that everything will be fine, and that protecting others is everyone's choice, and she has already made it. The maniac's hand rises above the girl and tightly squeezes the bloody blade, intending to strike at the tender body of this harmless girl. In the next scene, we see Manri naked, and his body has inscriptions on it, and he himself, as far as we understand, does not understand where he is and what is happening to him. Next, we are shown busty girls, and Manri realizes that he is in the afterlife, and that his soul will soon find peace. The girl in red asks Manri to come to her, because she wants to tell him something very important, because she has been waiting for him for a very long time. Manri goes to meet this girl, but an old man Hung Lao appears behind him, who has the gift of visiting the world of the dead and sometimes seeing the future. The old man returns Manri to the world of the living, saying that it's too early for a young guy to stay in the world of the dead, because he still has unfinished business. The maniac raises his hand over the harmless girl and is going to strike his last blow and end her torment, and with them, her life. Suddenly, the maniac sees a green ball coming at him, which consists of monsters. This lump of creatures hits him and knocks him down with such force that the maniac loses the blade and steps back. In front of him is a huge monster consisting of the bodies of dozens of absorbed creatures, and which has 10 times more strength than usual. And in the center of this monster, there is a main head responsible for controlling the body. The maniac gets hit after hit and is not yet able to resist the monster, which has evolved several steps higher than herself. The maniac again receives a crushing blow and hits his body against the ceiling, from which he receives too much damage. Because of this, the black-haired maniac becomes enraged and says that he will not just lose because he wanted to have fun with all the other survivors. He says that now he will get to the head controlling the body and finish off this monster, and it will be very fun and exciting for him. He finds his deadly blade and begins to swing them expertly, repelling the attacks of a large monster. The maniac begins to pull out one absorbed body after another, thereby weakening the power and strength of this monster. At some point, a maniac jumps on the shoulders of this monster and strikes him in the back, namely, in places that are the blind spot of this creature. We can see by the maniac's face that being in such a rage, he himself begins to evolve into a new stage, since his face is covered with terrible veins, and his eyes acquire a red hue. The maniac continues with his anger and rage to strike blow after blow in the back of the monster, and a small gap in the creature's body opens in front of him. The black-haired maniac believes that by opening the crack, he will see who actually controls the body of this monster. With the last of his strength, he stretches the gap to the right size and is shocked by what he sees after that. His eyes open to the face of our main character, who all this time, surprisingly for us, was inside this monster and controlled it. He opens his eyes, realizing how surprised the maniac is now, and prepares to launch retaliatory attacks. He grabs the maniac's throat with his hand and lifts him above himself, showing how strong he has now become after mutating into something frightening and incredible. Our girlfriends see that Manri has returned and were very happy about it, as Manri managed to save them for the 3rd time at the very last second. For inexplicable reasons, other monsters begin to attack the maniac and surround him and do not touch anyone else from the survivors who are in this car. The maniac does not understand why this is happening, and besides, he cannot move his arms or legs, as if someone is controlling him. He realizes with horror that Manri's mind controls him and all the other monsters, and it is Manri who gives orders to the monsters to do what he wants. Unfortunately for our characters, the maniac completes the stage of evolution into the next monster, and he becomes an order of magnitude stronger than he was before, thanks to which he is freed from the influence of Manri. We see that now the maniac has formed new limbs that he can control as if with his blade. Manri is not going to give up and lose to this man, so he gathers all his remaining forces together and is going to attack again. He gives the order to the monsters to attack the maniac, but he successfully repels this attack with the help of his new limbs. Manri gets angry and becomes even more furious, which makes his hair on his head even longer, and it seems like a few more seconds or efforts, and Manri himself will become a new monster. He calms down with thoughts that he does not want to harm anyone except a maniac, and an idea comes to his head how he can be defeated. Manri provokes the maniac to attack and is substituted for her, but all this is done so that the maniac breaks the window on the train with his new limbs. The black-haired man thinks that now he will win this fight and continue to have fun with the girl Manri, since victory in this battle is almost ready. We see that the fragments of a broken window on the train hurt even a girl, from which she screams and begins to be even more afraid. The monsters immediately run to the girl's scream and climb through the broken window into the damaged train car. However, they do not attack people because Manri absorbs them and multiply their strength with each body received. He evolves from the real lord of these creatures, and besides, he manages to keep his sanity. We can say that at this moment he is almost the god of monsters. The maniac froze in one place and realizes that he will not be able to resist him, since his power is practically unlimited, and he is angry why Manri was awarded such a divine power, and not him. Manri directs hundreds of creatures and monsters at the maniac, and gives them the order to destroy, which they successfully do. The girl watches everything in fear and does not believe her eyes, because yesterday they lived a normal life. And today she watches two demigods fighting among themselves, and one of them is Manri, her new friend. The girl takes a frying pan and starts walking towards Manri. She is afraid of him, but at the same time understands that everything that just happened was done to protect good people, including herself. Manri is sitting almost without strength, and he can no longer control the monsters. He vaguely remembers who he was just now and what power he possessed. Probably this power does not obey him yet, and can manifest itself only in the most exceptional cases. The main character coughs up his own blood because his body can no longer withstand such enormous loads, and he hardly remains conscious. The girl with trepidation and slight fear approaches him, and begins to call him and asks him to come to his senses. We see that Manri has got back on his feet, but this does not mean that now he cannot be afraid. He opens his eyes and sees in front of him the familiar silhouette of the girl he fell in love with at first sight. He sees her legs in a short skirt, as well as stockings under her, and inside he begins to have feelings, the nature of which he hardly controls. Drooling starts to flow from his mouth because a monster is sitting inside him and he really wants to try this girl. Manri lashes out at his new girlfriend, and his eyes glow with rage, unbridled and unpredictability. The girl is crying, but she is not going to run away, because she believes that Manri will be able to control herself, and she fully trusts fate. Manri picks her up very tightly and hugs her to him. The girl felt blood flow down her neck, and she can't believe that Manri bit her, as most likely he finally turned into a monster. We are shown that Manri bit his own hand in order not to bite this girl and thus curb the voice raging inside him and the thirst for flesh. He addresses the girl with the words that he thought he would never see her again. The bright light of the moon falls on Manri's tired and pain-shrouded body, which, as it now seems to him, hardly obeys himself. And he says that he has not seen anything more beautiful than this girl, and he asks her name. She apologizes for the fact that she has not yet introduced herself as her name, because there was no right moment for this. The girl says that her name is Victoria, and she is insanely glad to see him alive. Next, we are shown that Manri's mother is talking to her lover about what they will do after they survive. The mother says that she is worried about her weak son named Manri, who most likely has already died. Nika overheard this conversation and also realizes that her mother is cheating on their father, who went to look for a daughter and son and risk their lives for them. Meanwhile, the monsters are tightly enveloping the train and preparing to pull it off the rails to profit from its stuffing. At this time, Victoria tells Manri that she was able to protect the little girl as she was asked. We see that in reality the child sleeps carelessly and feels safe next to Manri and Victoria. We can say that they will be able to replace her dead parents. Manri looks at Victoria's clothes and skin and sees that she is all cut and torn, and he understands that the girl needs to find new clothes so that she feels good. The main character sees Victoria's bust and regrets that he could not help her cope with the maniac earlier. He understands that while she is on the train, she will not be safe. Manri tells Victoria that she needs to try to get them off the train so that they are safe, but she is not satisfied with this, as she wants to be with him until the end. Victoria understands that it will be better for the child and the remaining survivors, but still does not want to get off the train. Manri says that this is the only right choice they should make, especially since it will be easier for him to save his parents and sisters alone. Victoria wakes up the baby and tells her that she needs to leave, and that soon the baby will be completely safe. Next, we are shown Manri's father and his new friends, who continue to fight against the creatures in the hope of finding their relatives and children, and we see some strange silhouette in front of them. It turns out that the twin sisters have grown together and mutated into some kind of creature, and they have become 2 times stronger. In addition, some infected people can now crawl on the ceiling, and they have surrounded our characters. They think that they have fallen into a trap from which they will not get out alive, and even the sword of one of them is powerless here. However, Manri's father shows unprecedented courage and enters into an unequal battle with these monsters. The other guys are inspired by the fighting spirit of Manri's father, and also start fighting and helping him. We see that Manri has put on a new jacket that he found in the passenger's belongings, and now he feels much more comfortable because the temperature on the train has dropped. From Manri's shy face, we understand that Victoria has also found new clothes in which she most likely looks even better. A short denim skirt, high black stockings, delicate pink skin, all this attracts Manri more than ever. Her big bust and beautiful tight brown blouse leaves no chance for the main character. Now Victoria looks even sweeter and more beautiful than before, and it turned out that all the worst for her is already over. Manri draws attention to the girl who has been hiding under the table all this time and saying something in a whisper. She apparently lost her mind from the horrors she had seen earlier, as did several other passengers. She hugs the maniac's hand in the hope that she will move, and she will have something to shoot live on the internet about. Suddenly Manri shouts that the monsters have penetrated inside and everyone needs to run away, because he can no longer control them. Everyone escapes to another car, and Manri turns around to buy some time for his friends, because now he is confident in his abilities. Manri grabs the maniac's blade to use it as a weapon. We see that he easily begins to deal with monsters using a deadly blade. By his appearance, it may seem that his behavior slightly resembles the behavior of a maniac, and for good reason, because at some point their minds connected and our protagonist adopted his experience and habits. Victoria sees that monsters are starting to climb through the back door of the car in large numbers, and informs our main character about it. Manri tries to slam this door and puts all the strength he has left to do it. He says that after everything that has happened to them, he will not let them die at the hands of the most ordinary, stupid monsters. He slams the back door of the car, chopping off the fingers of the monsters. We see that Victoria is worried about Manri's condition and asks how she can help him. Manri says that his body cannot withstand such enormous loads, and it is very difficult for him to restrain the mutation every second and keep his mind clean from the thoughts of the monster inside him. Suddenly Manri's face becomes happy, as he has seen something that can help him improve the situation. This is the key to the door to the train that lies in the hands of a deceased train employee. Manri begins to take this key from the corpse's hand, but feels that something bad is about to happen. At this moment, a mutated monster of an even higher level than a maniac appears in front of him. Namely, the monster has acquired the form of a snake. This snake-shaped creature is several times larger than Manri, has great agility, and the ability to quickly attack and spew venom. Victoria thinks when this hell and the worst day in her life will end, she could not imagine what could be worse than a maniac. But now the situation is getting even worse. At the same time, Manri is ready to fight this monster, because he has adopted both composure and calmness from the maniac. He tells the girls to run away and hide in a safe place. However, Victoria is frozen with fear and cannot move while the monster flies straight at her. Manri pushes Victoria aside and takes her away from the monster's line of attack. Victoria falls on a shelf with things, but thanks to this she manages to avoid more serious damage. At this moment, she sees a long snake body flying past her, which now attacks Manri and causes serious damage to him. Victoria understands that it's all because of her, because at that second she showed weakness and put herself in danger, thereby leaving Manri no choice. The monster tries to devour Manri and almost closes its huge mouth with sharp teeth, but our main character managed to stop the jaws. He finds the monster's prickly tongue in his mouth and grabs it with all his might. He pulls this tongue with all his might and tears it off completely so that the monster does not want to devour anyone. After that, we see how Manri attacks the monster with the same abilities as the maniac had, and now it becomes clear to us that he takes over the abilities of those with whom he establishes a connection during the battle. Victoria thinks that with each such battle, Manri becomes more and more powerful, but at the same time he becomes more and more dangerous for himself and others, the more difficult it becomes for him to control himself. Manri temporarily turns off the monster and grabs his friends to get them off the train. He opens the doors of the train with the discovered key, and an opportunity opens up for them to escape from it. Victoria sees that at this time they are just passing a field. She shows everyone that there are big snowdrifts ahead that you can jump into. The first two people jump off the train, namely the actor and the grandmother they took from that car. They fall face first into a snowdrift at high speed, but they remain alive, and now they cannot fear for their lives. Then Victoria and her child are going to jump off the train next. Victoria, realizing that this may be the last time she sees Manri, says that she loves him with the purest and truest love. Manri admits that he also has feelings for her and hopes that they will meet again. Victoria says that although it was the most hellish day of her life, she is glad that she met him. Manri wishes good luck to her new friend and hopes that this will not be their last meeting. The girl jumps off the train and also falls into a snowdrift. However, when she gets up, she sees something she never expected to see. The train is followed by a huge tail of monsters who are eager to get inside, and there are so many zombies that they can almost stop this train. The girl begins to worry a lot about her new boyfriend and his future fate. Manri closes the door through which he just let people out. Finally, he is ready to fight monsters in full force, and now he does not need to hold back. His piercing gaze speaks of unprecedented confidence and purposefulness. Now nothing and no one will stop him. The monster is being attacked by Manhwa, and now there will be a new fight. At this moment, through the passage of the carriage, we notice a group of young people who are watching the battle of Manhwa and this monster. Among them, we also see a younger sister, Sarah, who protects some cowardly nerd with her body. A battle of incredible proportions is going on between Manhwa and the monster, and ordinary people can only watch it. After another monster attack, Manhwa takes an advantageous position and is already thinking out a plan for how to defeat this very fast creature. At this moment, a cold sweat permeates Manhwa's body as he notices a familiar face among the crowd of people. He sees that among them there is his own sister whom he has been looking for so long. Sarah screams and says she recognized him even with a new hair color. However, at this moment, Manhwa is distracted by his sister and the monster strikes him a crushing blow. Manhwa takes a lot of damage from this attack and loses consciousness for a few seconds. Sarah says she will help her brother as he doesn't have to fight for their lives alone. Sarah rushes to help her brother and is going to fight with a stick. The monster opens its mouth and is about to swallow the annoying Manhwa and put an end to this battle. Abruptly, everyone flies into the air and begins to turn over. It turns out that the monsters still disrupted the movement of the train, and part of it derailed. We see that several wagons are falling off the bridge along with monsters. At this time, in the car where the maniac remained, everything also turned upside down. We understand that he opened his eyes and still survived the battle with Manhwa, and this is very bad, because the only thing he now craves is revenge on the main character. We see how all the cars start to swing from side to side. Eventually, the whole train derails and something very terrible is about to happen. The train crashes into another train and it finally stops. All the passengers inside are turning over without realizing what is happening now. A girl in a strict business suit calls a cleaning group and commands them to proceed with the operation. And now we are being shown the very same sweep group that is most likely heading straight to the stopped train. Then the events are transferred to our friends who left the train earlier. They find some abandoned nearby town where no one lives. We see that the streets on it are empty and there is not a single person. Victoria freezes in horror as an incredibly scary picture opens her eyes. Namely, she sees a mountain of corpses wrapped in black bags, and she understands that most likely they got into the territory of the base where this virus was grown. And now we see a broken train and people who are starting to come to their senses. Manhwa also regained consciousness and sees that a helicopter is flying over them. He shouts at this helicopter asking for help for him and the rest of the people. However, the helicopter just starts to fly away in the other direction. Sister Manhwa feels that these are not ordinary rescuers, and that they will not help them. After which she looks at Manhwa's wounds and sees that they have disappeared. She can't believe her eyes, but the wounds on her brother's body healed in a matter of seconds. In front of her is no longer her former brother, who was a weak coward. In front of her is his new version, and he begins to reveal the power lurking inside him. At this moment, the same monster appears out of nowhere, but already at the stage of evolution higher than before, and our main character sees how huge he is. Everyone starts running away from him, and Manhwa does not want to fight with him since his strength is already at the limit. Suddenly, the characters meet barbed wire on their way and I can't get through it. Manhwa grabs the monster with her tentacles and pulls it towards her. Sarah sees all this and does not know how to help her brother. The monster's terrible mouth pulls Manhwa closer to devour him whole. At this moment, stones launched with special force begin to fall into the monster's mouth. The creature relaxes its grip and Manhwa manages to fall to the ground. Manhwa understands that his strength and body are already at maximum capacity, and that he will not have long left if he continues to fight at the same pace. Suddenly, Manhwa looks away from where the stones flew. He sees an old man whom he had previously observed in the train cars. Judging by the appearance, the blind old man has a hidden power that helps him fight against such monsters. At this time, Manhwa's father and his new friends get out of the train and do not understand where they are. Manhwa's mother, along with her lover and eldest daughter, also get off the train. They show us that they find themselves in front of some kind of barrier, at which soldiers in special uniforms are standing. The mother's lover tells them not to be afraid and to follow him. A little ahead, you can see how a couple of women pass to the fence and show that one of them has a bite and that they need the help of doctors. However, the soldiers shoot them. This is seen by all the surviving passengers. The mother's lover approaches the fence where the soldiers are standing. He takes something out of his jacket and it looks like some kind of ID. He shows it to the soldiers and they greet him as their superior. The mother's lover tells her to follow him and they will be safe. At this time, a tough battle is going on between the old man and the creepy creature, in which the grandfather is still losing. He uses his stone-throwing skill with great power. For a while, he manages to weaken the monster and cause damage to it. Manhwa feels bad and realizes that he can't get into a fight yet. He remembers that at the time of the battle with the maniac, he was at the peak of his abilities. He remembers that the weak point of such huge creatures is their middle, and that there may be ordinary people inside such monsters. He shouts to his grandfather about this. Grandfather uses the skill of divine vision and sees through the monster and makes sure that an ordinary girl is sitting inside it. Grandfather gathers the remaining forces into a single unit and strikes his last blow. A bunch of energy beams pierce the monster's body and destroy it. Crows arrive on the monster's corpse and start eating rotten meat. Manri notices that the monster's corpse has eaten a crow, and the main character realizes that the battle is not over. From the body of the monster that has just been defeated, new bodies of attractive girls begin to form. We see that several pairs of them appear. New monsters have surrounded our characters and are going to attack. The most important of them approaches grandfather and pulls out some kind of sharp blade. She attacks the grandfather and cuts off his legs. It amuses this monster and she wants to play with someone else. Manri enters the battle and punches this monster in the face, knocking out his teeth. Based on the appearance of grandfather, he will soon leave our world. The monster clearly didn't like the fact that Manri had hit her and she was going to finish him off. Manri is not ready for this attack as he has not recovered his strength yet. Copies of this creature surround Manri, leaving no one a chance to help him. Slowly and with great pleasure, the monsters begin to eat Manri.